Hello and welcome to what we hope will be the first in a series of conversations we're hosting with major decision makers in the city to talk about issues important to our readers. I'm Chris Caesar, the editor of Malden Patch, and today I'm joined by a venerable who's who of Malden development. First off, we have Mayor Gary Christensen, who's made tearing down City Hall and downtown redevelopment a major cornerstone of his administration. Thanks for coming on the program
Pleasure.
today. He's joined by the city's business development officer, Kevin Duffy, who is responsible for retaining and attracting businesses to the city. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Chris.
And to their left, the longtime executive director of the Malden Redevelopment Authority, Stephen Washewski, excuse me.
Warshawski. Close.
And to his left, assistant executive director, Deborah Burke. They both kind of split up all the projects in the city together at the organization, so we're happy to have both of their contributions today at the discussion. Okay. And last but not least, we have our reader panelist who joined a contest actually to come on the air today and discuss her views with us. Ina, I'm going to butcher your last name, I'm sorry. Barbitska. Yeah. Is a freelance writer and a volunteer instructor at the Immigrant Learning Center in the city. But the most important participant today is you, our readers. You can send questions in via Twitter or just talk about the discussion on there under the hashtag #PatchForum, as well as calling the number at the bottom of the screen or just commenting on our website. And we'll just start out the conversation today by asking the mayor our first question. Is Malden Center at a turning point today for development?
Yes, it is. And the reason it is, I think, because of the dedication of Kevin Duffy and Steve Washewski and Debbie Burke, and along with Mayor Howard, who did a lot of prep before he left office. And we were just going over some of the projects that are on the table right now, and I think if you add them all up, they're $250 million that potentially could be invested in the downtown. And as you mentioned at the outset, the removal of City Hall, which is really what I have staked my term on, is, to me, near and dear to supporting a lot of these projects that are on the table. And let me just say, it sounded, as you stated it, it sounded great a couple months ago, but as you get into it and realize the, all the nuances with, removing City Hall, it's challenging, but it's something that we're working on a daily basis to try and accomplish.
And Steve, you've been the executive director for about 25 years or so you might have a unique perspective on that kind of a question. Does this seem like a unique time?
It's certainly a very interesting time, and I would agree with the mayor. It's at a kind of a pivotal point. Mm-hmm. There are significant major developments on the drawing boards that, with the little bit of luck and the right timing, could take off and could generate a significant amount of private investment in the downtown that would kind of create for us that niche that every downtown now strives for, and would provide a really good platform and base for the city's tax base to expand. And that's really the critical piece going forward. Is great plans, great ideas, require some amount of financing, and so what you plan for and what you pull off, you want to be able to create additional financial support for the city's services that the mayor and the council every year have to struggle with putting together a budget that has lots of obligations in it. So I think this is a great time for the city of Malden and the downtown.
You've lived in the city for, I think, 11 years, you said. How does that feel to you? Do you feel like the city's at a turning point?
I can compare because I came from St. Petersburg, Russia. It's, the largest cultural center in the country. And I was told when I came to the Massachusetts that Boston is, cultural center of United States. So, and I definitely agree with this, and I like Malden. I think it's a very nice city, but I think it's, it's required, revival of its, historical point as a cultural center and as industrial center. I make a lot of, historical research about Malden, And I found that there were really great potential in the city in 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, and unfortunately it's like lost for now. And I thought that there is a great potential here still. So we just need to find, the places. And I thought, for example, like a cultural center for adults as well as for, teenagers and children will be, pivotal point in this, direction, because people have no place where to go after they return from their, workplaces. They just go to their houses, they sit, they watch TV, but that's all. And I think it's one of my ideas how I want this, participation.
Right.
What about you, Kevin?
Well, actually, that's a great jumping off point, because Ina brings up a good point about the centers we can have in our downtown. And I know it's been a drive of Mayor Christensen's to create a new teen center. And Steve Wachowski and Debbie Burke have really been helping with that tremendously. So you might want to speak to the mayor about what this could provide for our downtown, giving our kids something to do after school that's still right in the heart of our city. So on one hand, you're keeping them safe and giving them good things to do, but also keeping them connected to the economic center of our city.
And do you think there's a turning point right now, Deb? Or?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited with all the possibilities that are out there, and we've invested, a few years at doing some of the downtown revitalization, and it finally feels really good that we're there. With some more steps to be made, obviously, with the demolition of the City Hall building, but we've discovered some great restaurants that have come to Malden, that we've been involved with attracting here. I don't want to name the list because I know I'll leave somebody out, and so that's a good niche for us. And some of the residential development that's on board now and is going to be coming on board will bring some more people, that will bring vibrancy to this square as well. So I think we're on the cusp of some really good things, and let alone even the office workers that work here too. So hopefully that will be a built-in base of support for restaurants, retail, etc.
That's a good segue into our next question, actually, that I'm going to pose to you. There's a lot of construction planned for Pleasant Street over the summer, and I was wondering if you could maybe break that down for some of the viewers, what they might expect by the end of next season.
Okay, and we will be holding, under the auspices of the mayor, a public meeting, maybe even two, prior to the start of construction. Construction's never easy. It does, inconvenience people as much as you try to minimize it, but we will. I know with ongoing announcements, and we've got great social media capabilities now with the new administration, that we'll do our best to, minimize. All businesses, we do have that pledge, and the contractors to abide by it will be kept open during the construction. So that, piece of it cannot stop. But bottom line is the city received a substantial federal earmark thanks to the efforts of Congressman Markey. And it's been in the works for several years because there was a state process. But finally, the good news is that the bids are going to be opened on April 18th, so hopefully by the state. So hopefully we'll draw, a good response to that. There'll be a review process by the state of those bids, and then the hope or the expectation would be that work could commence sometime June or July in Malden Square. And real quickly, it would include the resurfacing of the entire roadway. It will continue to stay concrete, but that base will be ground and overlaid with concrete. There'll be repairs to the brick sidewalk where necessary. There'll be all new period lighting in the square, and the mayor's insisting that it be LED lights, and they are going to be, I believe. I think we've just snuck that into the contract, and it will be good for energy savings. It will have some other street furniture, various benches and trash receptacles and whatnot. And then I think these gentlemen can speak to some of the other amenities that have been are being added as a result. Maybe the meters,
Yeah,
Mayor.
I think the meters, we're looking at a rain garden, thanks to a lot of the new environmentalists we have here in the city. Wayfinding signs, I think we're going to do at the base of Pleasant Street. We're going to really focus in on pedestrian access, getting to and from the downtown to make it easier for people to be able to get here safely.
Besides tearing down City Hall, what kind of additions would you do to increase pedestrians in that Pleasant Street area?
Well, I think we have to find ways to, from my perspective, we have some great neighborhoods around the city. They've been here for a very long time, and now we have to try to find a way to help them get here. If you if you know from where I represented as a city councilor up in Ward 1, Route 60 is very tough to get across and actually gain access to the square. So the next stop for us as we get going here in the first year of the administration is to bring together a group that would probably include Ina to look at better ways of improving walkability and pedestrian access around the downtown.
All right, I got to move on to our next question now. We'd like to talk a little bit about the empty storefronts downtown. Obviously, the huge Bank of America branch that was downtown just announced they would be leaving. And we wanted to ask if the city is looking to help the building owners find tenants for these buildings, or what kind of efforts you're making on that front.
Absolutely. We have a very good understanding of all of the spaces that are in the downtown and the square footage involved. And when we hear of new businesses that want to come in, we try to play matchmaker with that. But then we've also been very aggressive in reaching out to other businesses that have been in Massachusetts or even national and pitching them on coming to Malden, telling them about the revitalization that's going on, the renaissance, if you will, and why they should be part of this. And we're getting some very favorable responses about people saying, okay, we'll take a look at it. It's a long process, especially when you deal with the larger chains, but I don't think there's as many empty spaces as you would think. Like if you looked at downtown Melrose, it's a very narrow, smallly defined downtown. And so if you had a number of empty storefronts there, it would really jump out. We have a larger downtown, and so we have a smaller number that is actually spread out over that area. So when you actually add all the numbers up, it's a larger number. Let me correct that. It's a larger number, but because it's spread out, it's just not as pervasive. So what we will do is try to fill those spots with new tenants that we want to bring in, but work with the existing building owners to fill those spots.
But the one thing we have done the first couple of months is really work on developing a solid repository of contacts for when someone wants to come here or wants to expand. And so that's what Kevin's been doing in the first 3 months of the administration. Again, Facebook, Twitter, we're using social media as another means to make sure that people know that we do have someone dedicated to working with the business community to try and stay above or ahead of the other cities and towns who, now we have to consider as close competitors. I think Debbie and Steve mentioned that the world's changed forever. And so, what we do going forward will really, dictate, our future.
Is there some kind of benefit to the owners to leave these storefronts open? What are some of the obstacles maybe to bringing businesses downtown?
Well, there's really no benefit to them. They don't get a tax break or anything. I think the benefit to them, and I think part of what we've been able to accomplish, particularly over the last few years, is we've developed a very good working relationship with the property owners, who for many years kind of felt that the city was on the opposite side of where they wanted to go. And in fact, the owner of the building where the Bank of America was called 2 weeks ago, and we spoke to him about how do we backfill that space. It's 9,000 square feet, and we began a discussion about the great possibilities that site holds for a major restaurant. I mean, it's really kind of a niche that's developed in downtown Malden. A lot of people now think of the downtown as a place to come and have dinner, which is wonderful for the city. That's great space. It's right at the base of the ramp that comes from the CBD garage. So you literally could park in the garage and walk out in a covered ramp, walk down and walk right into the restaurant. So, we've and will contact some of the major restaurant national chains because it's 9,000 square feet. It's a big space. But he's a very aggressive owner, and he's good at thinking outside of the box. So we're looking forward to working with him to fill that niche.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
just from my point of view, when you speak about restaurants, we have definitely great restaurants in the area, and if it's maybe will be good if we have one more. But as when I spoke with Chris, I told when you have too many antivirus software in your computer, they kill each other. If you have too many restaurants or cafe in the close area, they compete with each other in pretty tough competition. So it's maybe in some way it's maybe not. It's like my point of view, not good. And also, one of the famous writer wrote about the small cities. It was in Russia and back in America because they traveled. Like when they come to the small city, they see a lot of funeral houses, funeral homes, a lot of cafe, a lot of barber shops, and it's look like the man came to this world just to, to eat, to make his haircut, and to die. You see? So we need something more for the city, and I thought, like Malden had in 19th century, we cannot just have, customer service economy. If you want to develop city, you need some kind of, manufacturing jobs, and it's maybe medical high tech, which is from the point of ecological view, it's good. And like Cambridge, Cambridge have a lot of, biotech companies. It can be different, like nanotechnology, something like this, because we have a great location and we have many students who live here. So for them it will be, very nice place. So we can find people who can, come here and develop this.
I think
It's just
in terms of diversity
Yeah.
of business, I think one thing we probably haven't been good at is really promoting what we have. And I think there's several hidden jewels and hidden companies within the city that people don't even realize exist. Your point about the attracting the Cambridge market, that's been one of the efforts over the years, and we have one developer in particular that's been very aggressive at going after Kendall Square folks, and he actually landed a Kendall Square tenant to just recently relocate to the development that I'm sure everybody knows about, which is River's Edge. And do we need to do more on that? Absolutely. We're constantly, trying to promote ourselves. We're at this mayor's request putting together a new business marketing piece in concert with his office. But I think, we have restaurants. I think we have some retail. I think we've got a great performing art center, Jenkins Auditorium in the high school. We've got a wonderful library that, probably could be open more in terms of the cultural activities in its older building. They've got a great, probably the finest art collection on the North Shore.
Yeah,
but we're trying to change it up a little, but we're never going to be a mall, but we're trying to get different little pieces, and the start was the restaurant. So we've been successful in that area. I'm not sure the more you have, I don't think I'd want a restaurant in every single space, but I'm not sure the more you have would kill each other. I think competition's great for
Yeah.
business, and they feed off each other, but that's just, again, my opinion.
And we hired a restaurant consultant 2 years ago to take a look at the downtown and really particularly focus in on a couple of restaurants that were having some problems. And one of the elements of the report back to us was you can't have enough good restaurants, that they do feed off one another in a good way, and that the more, because restaurants are kind of destination oriented things, and so when people come down to a downtown and they go to a nice restaurant that they like and they see other restaurants around it, they'll tend to come back, and that's what we're trying to do, is get people to keep coming back, and not just people that live here in Malden, but people from outside the community. 15, 20 years ago, if you lived in Malden, you wanted to go eat, you went up Route 1 or you went into Boston. Now the commute it's kind of a cross commute. It's the downtowns have developed a series of nice restaurants, so there's good places to eat in downtown Malden and downtown Melrose and Winchester and other things, and so we've kind of glommed onto that market, and we just feel like the more good restaurants that attract more people, the better it is for this community.
I think you're right, but it's one more aspect to this. People come to the restaurants on the weekend mostly, or after their job, after their working hours. Those who live here, most of them work somewhere. So during day hours, they just have no chance to come here and to eat. So if we have some more businesses, and not just eating businesses or something more, there will be more people who can visit these restaurants or cafe.
If I can just jump in, we have a question from one of our readers watching on the website, and Peggy asks, Charles Street development has been successful in the past. We now have a long-term vacancy next to Blockbuster and a new vacancy where the Boston Market used to be. Why would new chains or developers come in when existing chains have left because the locations were not economically viable for the businesses?
Well, as far as Blockbuster and Boston Chicken, neither one of those companies left because the location wasn't viable. I mean, Blockbuster has been, that whole video rental business has gone bye-bye because of the access now you have to your television set to watch movies, and Boston Chicken was a great company. I call it Boston Chicken. It was Boston Market, originally Boston Chicken. That overexpanded and then ran into some financial problems. They didn't leave, as far as anything we know, because of a lack of viability in the location. Those locations on Route 60 are the most viable. You have retail rents out there that are between $25 and $30 a square foot. So they'll get filled. And again, I mean, there are lots of users looking to come into this downtown that are good because the rents are cheaper vis-a-vis Route 60, and the buildings are, I think, nicer.
Yeah, and I think another thing is if we do, follow through on these proposed developments, that would even be more of an impetus for, businesses to fill in, those storefronts that might be vacant at the present moment.
All right. Did anyone else want to weigh in on that question?
I think it was answered. Those are just prime locations, and they won't stay empty for long.
Right.
All right. Well, the next topic, we want to move on to maybe some of the major projects that are planned, starting with the baseball stadium. And we wanted to know, there's been a lot of talk about the potential of an independent league baseball stadium at the National Grid site. If the project comes through and is a success, what do you anticipate the benefits will be for Malden?
Oh, they'll be endless. This could be one of those times that we could have the opportunity to transform the city forever, because not only am I looking at the ballpark itself, but everything that goes on around the park, I think will open up new opportunities for the city for years to come. So that's my immediate reaction to what that can mean for Malden. I think the other thing that makes it attractive for all of us is, the developer to this point is proposing to fund the entire operation, on his own with other developers. So I mean, to me, it's a win-win.
Is there a concern that if the stadium doesn't work out, that you kind of have this large, stadium in the middle of the city, all that property taken up with nothing going on there? Is there a backup plan for that kind of development? Or?
Steve, I know you've had a lot of conversations, so.
Yeah, when you do development, you don't ever really worry that it's not going to work. I mean, what you're thinking about is, and you do put a lot of thought and effort into the preliminary planning, the reviewing of the proposals, so you expect that it's going to work. So I am, based on our review of these proposals, or that proposal, our meetings with these developers, our extensive research into the team, the use, the league they're talking about, and the potential. We're confident that once this baseball stadium gets built, it will be a great success. And I agree with the mayor totally. That's the turning point. That really creates the niche that really we don't have in very few downtowns. I'm trying to think of another downtown in the whole country that would have a major, and when I say major, 6,500 seat sports complex in the middle of it. Beyond the analysis that we're doing, the developers right now are in the process of negotiating with National Grid, who are doing their own vetting of this proposal from all different angles, but particularly the financial viability aspect of it. I know that National Grid, who we speak to, Kevin and Debbie and I, we talk to them monthly on conference calls, or more often if needed. They've hired a nationally recognized sports consulting firm to review the proposed baseball stadium, which, by the way, is, if you want a backup plan, the site's going to be used a lot more than just for the 60 or 70 baseball games. These guys have a plan to really use this 12 months of the year, so it's more than just a baseball stadium.
And that goes to kind of Ina's point that if you want things to do in the city, and they've been talking about using it somewhat as a business conference center. They've been talking about the possibility of siting a sports museum in there, which would showcase Malden athletics. They're talking about the potential again with city permission and a whole vetting process of maybe concerts. So you know,
Movie
and,
nights,
you know, yeah,
movie
right.
nights, yeah.
Restaurant, retail store.
So may I ask if you said about 12 months, so it will be open arena. So how it can be or closed?
No, the ball field hasn't opened yet. This is a new ballpark that
Yeah.
will be built. It's not built yet. It's on.
Yeah, I understand,
okay.
but
Open air,
will it
are you
have a
saying?
roof or no? Because
No roof.
Oh,
no
no,
roof. Because in this case, how it can be used for 12 months?
No, they're talking about a bubble.
over the.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Right.
similar to what you'd see over at Boston College. So you could use the field part of the stadium 12 months of the year. But the stadium will also have in it a restaurant and a conference center and a retail store, and so there's plenty of indoor space
So
as well.
inside, yeah.
Right.
And I also have a question in connection with this. I just made some kind of homework. Besides, what about noise pollution? Because there are a lot of concerns around the country, and even from people who live close to Fenway. So it's a very high level of noise, and it can be isolated by whatever I read on the website about this proposal. So because it's in downtown, if it was outside on the edge, it will be much easier. But the level of noise is very high.
Well, I think it's in the perfect location. It's not on the edge. It is in the middle of the downtown. It's not up against a residential neighborhood. There's room for the noise to, and I'm not saying we would just willy-nilly allow an AC/DC concert there that would blow people's ears off. But it's in a great spot where the noise can be mitigated, and it won't impact.
I was going to say credit to the developer too. He has already thought about this, and there's a possibility of adding sound barriers, in the back end of the stadium, because there are residents up in Ward 1 that are somewhat nearby, but he is conscious of what could emanate from the
Because
stadium.
whatever I found, the level of noise, which is mostly produced by voices, mostly, it's called so-called low frequency. And low frequency waves of sound, they, much faster and much easier, can go through different barriers, like, like walls, it can be beton walls or whatever. And also the level of noise of stadium, it's found by, some scientists, it's like 120 decibels. And from, major airports, it's like 140. So, and people can be, safe only for 5 minutes in this location. So it just, I just don't say that I against this idea, but, because it's in the middle of the city, it's really a very serious concern for many.
And
Well,
I think some of those
yeah.
concerns will be vetted.
Right.
The public process is nowhere near closed on this project. After they get through the National Grid review process, the mayor's insisted that there be at least one, if not, a couple of public hearings. So those questions will come up, and it will be up to them to assure the folks that they're going to take care of by addressing the problem or the issues.
All right, right now we're just going to take a quick break for a quick minute. So stay tuned, we'll be right back.
I'm Howard McGowan, and I'm Public Access.
Welcome back. Just picking up on our baseball discussion a moment ago, I wanted to ask the panel, how do you turn, obviously we're building this baseball stadium to have a good time, but also to, bring customers to the city. How do you turn people coming to see a baseball game into a customer for local businesses?
Well, I mean, with a ballpark like this, you're talking a couple 100,000 people a year visiting Malden. Not everyone's going to be from Malden, so there'll be outside people who come. The ballpark should be coming online just about the time we're finishing our Pleasant Street restoration. So as people come early or stay late and start to explore the downtown for places to eat, it'll supplement our restaurant industry that we've created here. But then also, to Inya's point, it becomes a marketing tool to get those bigger businesses here. If they can set up their business here where their employees can walk to a restaurant easily for lunch or for after dinner, have some entertainment venues, whether it's a ballpark or a concert, then they're more likely to want to be here, and that'll help Malden in the long run.
Yeah, that's what we're finding. The theme that we've undertaken with Debbie and Steve is, amenities. What can we offer that will make us a little bit more unique compared to other cities and towns? And I think this would be one. If you're looking on a map and you have the opportunity to go and take in a game or a concert or a movie, also maybe grab something to eat, I think they'll be more likely to do that here in Malden with those amenities. Right behind the ballpark is the plans for a bike path. So Bike to the Sea is already talking with us about how they can tie in this new path to the proposed ballpark.
Is there a sorry.
I'm sorry. The baseball developer group, they really want to be part of the community. They've said that on many occasions. They want to, they're building in a locker room for Malden High School to be able to have access to that field and play their games there. There's lots of opportunities for cross promotions between the downtown restaurants, stores, and the ball field that will take place. And the venue could be, the parking facilities, that the reason they're here is because there are about 1,500 parking spaces right across the street from this stadium. So the people that are parking could be given material, not only part of, introducing them to the baseball field and giving them tickets to the games, but also promoting downtown Malden businesses. So, there's lots of creative ways that they're interested in, and we're certainly interested in exploring.
We're just picking up on that point. We had a meeting with them the other day, Kevin and I think Steve, and we met with some folks from the Mystic River Watershed Association and folks that are in looking at environmental justice issues through TRICAP. And the baseball people were there because it was, how do you integrate the ball field into the larger picture of Malden? How do you even tie it to the river? The head of the group made a really nice argument, I think, or a nice point, in that he wants to make sure that whenever anybody leaves that ballpark, that they come away or they leave with some sense of what Malden's all about and a little piece of its history. So they're going to do some of that historical perspective, whether it be a museum or a nice walk around the place. So.
Yeah, and they were talking too about, I think, Steve, about having some of the local restaurants and some of the businesses have carts within the proposed ballpark.
Right.
So that, again, about cross promotion,
Right.
that's another thing that intrigued us.
Well, to follow up on Deb's point about how it will fit into Malden, we were curious. We have McDonald's Stadium is obviously going through some renovations this year. Will the high school teams be able to use this new stadium? How does McDonald's Stadium kind of fit into the whole system?
Well, the new baseball stadium, one of the things that we kind of insisted on right from the beginning, although I don't want it to appear to be a negotiating point, actually the developers were quite willing to do it, is when you're building this out, we want an additional locker room constructed that will be for local use for the high school team, and they readily agreed to do it. The field, so that would certainly accommodate baseball. Depending on how this field gets laid out, it could also accommodate football, soccer, lacrosse. So there are lots of opportunities for the local high schools and even the local youth sports programs who this development group wants to involve will have access to that field. What will happen at McDonald's Stadium is a great plus. It's another really nice addition of usable open space that won't be totally weather dependent like most of the fields around here are. And that's available for use also by the local youth sports teams, of which there are many, and the high school teams.
Yeah, and if you look, we get asked all the time, more park space. So this is an opportunity to, answer that query.
And we just got another question from Twitter. If we could get a short answer on this, she suggests, what about adding a small theater under the bleachers? It would increase your year-round foot traffic and provide great programming for kids.
A performing theater or a movie theater?
It is not clear.
We'll do
both.
both.
Yeah.
Love the idea of actually any kind of a theater.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, movie theater is something that we've talked about for a long time, and have offered on several occasions to give up the airspace on top of the air rights on top of either of the two garages downtown for a movie theater, which would be a perfect use of the space. And again, people go to the movies on weekends and nights when generally the garages are vacant. So that would be great. I don't know. I'm not sure which stadium they were talking about. Whether it be the new baseball stadium or the McDonald's stadium. But
yeah.
we'd certainly be happy to talk to them about maybe including that in their plan if there's room. I think it's great. Love it.
Yeah, I just would like to add about theater. I thought that we maybe can invite some students from we have a lot of art schools around in Boston area, like New England Conservatory, because students give free concerts to the audience, and maybe we can invite them to the city. They can participate in some concerts if we have the building, or even use Senate Center, which unfortunately close most of time, and we can invite students from BU or some other places, and this can be part of their internship, or they maybe even teach our high school students something, and plus giving a concert. And when you spoke about museum, it's also my kind of point of view. We definitely need museum in the city, because cities has such interesting history, maybe in comparison with neighbors. And it's a shame that we don't have a building, and we have a few historical buildings in the city. One, I think, on 10339 Pleasant Street, which an auction. So maybe it can be used as a museum and to show the history of the city, which was the cradle of the revolution. It can attract more people to the city, like tourist center.
I agree.
Well, just to move on to the next question, because we do want to talk about some other stuff as well. Mr. Mayor, you said you wanted to get rid of City Hall by the end of your first term. Do you have any specific options or any scenarios that you're playing out right now that you could share with our viewers?
No, except that the group is actively looking at what the potential is. I mean, I've sort of provided my thoughts on what we could do, and I'm enamored with the idea of us relocating to the potential of some of the existing vacant places in the downtown. I have great experience doing that at the state level. When I was budget director of the Middlesex Sheriff's Office, we signed a lease with Century Bank, and we've never looked back. We rent 10,000 square feet, and it takes us out of the maintenance of a building, which, if you look at the history, we're not very good at doing. So to me, that's the avenue I'm hoping works out for us. And if it does, I think, again, back to the ballpark, this too will be another opportunity to transform the city forever.
Do you folks think that that's a good way to bring foot traffic downtown by tearing down the City Hall?
Well, yeah, I do, actually. And the mayor has made it clear since the first time I sat down with him after he got elected, that was his number one priority. We're working up a couple of plans for him. Tearing it down is one thing. You've got to sell it, and you've got to get somebody to come in and develop it. You need a place to go, which we're working on some options for the mayor right now. And then how you're going to finance it. Right. And this development and these developments we're talking about, part of the plan would be to utilize the increased revenue from development of sites to help subsidize the cost of, if there is any, in relocating from that building. The one thing, we did a study back about 15 years ago. We brought in a group to take a look at the entire downtown plan, and I think one of the most interesting things that came out of that was, the access to the T station, which is really the key economic point of downtown, and how the downtown is kind of separated by the T station by this wall of City Hall and the wall that goes up to the park. And by tearing that down, what you do is you basically open up the downtown not only to the automobiles, but actually visually from the train station, where there are something on the order of 16,000 people a day that go through that station, who will actually be able to look across the street and see what's going on Pleasant Street. So I think that would be a big, big step.
We remember a few years ago there was discussion of maybe having some kind of student dormitories there.
Yeah.
Is that something that's still kind of in the mix?
Well, it was a graduate student proposal to put graduate student housing on the site, the remnant pieces of the site, once the building was knocked down. We haven't revisited that market recently, but what happened was that market, you know, just slowly disappeared because universities they were anti-building more student housing, and then Northeastern, you know, started looking at building more, you know, around their enclave. And when we were targeting Northeastern, we targeted even
Tufts Medical.
Tufts Medical, and you know, we just couldn't pull the trigger on it. So, but there are graduate students, and many of the interesting thing is there are graduate students that have found their way to Malden. Many of them live at 160 Pleasant Street. I think many of them are from Mass College of Art in there, and there's quite a few of them that live at 10, I think it's 10 Florence Street. That, you know, small residential development there. So. The younger students are finding their way here, but it just wasn't in a big way for that development piece.
And
In fact, there was
also a lot from Bunker Hill.
In Bunker Hill, right.
Yeah. It was such a good idea. One of the reasons it had legs was the group that was proposing to build this graduate student housing was in talking to Northeastern, who was having a terrible time expanding their dormitory space in the city.
Sure.
And when they were very close to making a commitment to come out this way, all of a sudden the logjam broke and they were given permission. So I suspect that the people in Boston found out what was happening and kind of removed the obstacles. But as Debbie said, the graduate students are here. I mean, they're here, the medical students, the people that work at the hospitals, they're all kind of out here now anyway. So
I think another wrinkle for us, though, and Kevin's pointed this out, is that if we do anything with City Hall, we have to address the police station, which share the utilities with us.
Sure.
But I think what's been, you know, intriguing to me that I didn't think prior to taking office is if we were able to do something with the police station, then all that parking along Exchange and Jackson Street would then become available for people to patronize the downtown area. I forget the number of spots, but you know, Kevin's looked at that pretty closely.
And Steve is absolutely right about when you redesign that land and have it redeveloped, you'll just be pulling people from the Malden T right down Pleasant Street to frequent our downtown. So it's not so much the car traffic that's going to make a big difference. It'll be the foot traffic from the T.
Sure. And let's move on. Speaking of, you know, residents downtown, the Super Fitness site, you know, has been there for a while. What's the kind of status for it now? And do we need more residential density downtown, or is there too much residential density already? What do you folks think? I'll start with the mayor.
Well, I've, believe me, prior to, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, I was sort of really on the fence of, you know, doing more residential, but I have since, you know, started to subscribe to the theory that if you know, bring people to the downtown with disposable income, then the businesses will follow. And I mean, if you look at some of the statistics that have been provided, you know, regarding 160 Pleasant and some of the other developments in and around, they're nearly all occupied. River's Edge, you know, they have the Criterion development down there. They're at 95% occupancy. So this whole smart growth idea, you know, I have really started to subscribe to. And so where they are now is the City Council voted the other night to pass the RIOB. So now once that paper gets to us and we analyze it and go over it, then the next step would be they could be in the ground within, you know, 6 to 12 months, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And just so our viewers know, this is a 3-building kind of mixed-use residential, 6-story.
Yeah, mixed use. And that was something we insisted on, was some type of, you know, retail at the base, which came from the visioning statement that we all have on our desks, and we try to follow the best we can, because that's where, you know, residents like Ina really provided a lot of input to us on what some of the things that if we do subscribe to the theory of really utilizing smart growth, you know, what we follow in doing that.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
And residential development is the way the market wants to go at this point, and The market will generally dictate what happens. Malden's a very attractive place for people to live who want to still have a connection to Boston, which you can easily have through the Orange Line. It's kind of a safe, secure, less expensive alternative to living in the city, yet you're only 10 minutes away and you don't even need an automobile. So there's lots of interest in developing residential development. Of course, interest rates are really good, and the history of doing development, market rate housing development in Malden and Medford, if you look down at River's Edge, has been extremely successful. Vacancy rates are 0. And so that creates a demand for good housing, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. The good thing about residential development, I mean, if you're going to have it, you want it in your core, you want it in the downtown, you're not using lots of land, you're not bringing in lots of automobiles. Residential development of market rate housing does not have a lot of children generally. That impacts the school system, the design of the buildings, brings state-of-the-art fire protection systems, so you're not having a draw on your emergency services personnel. You don't have a lot of police calls, but you have people with disposable income that come out of these buildings, and those are the people that'll be in your stores and restaurants, and that's kind of the theory behind the whole thing. But the mayor's absolutely right. Smart growth is what the state wants, and it's really what the market is dictating for Malden.
I've been covering Malden for about a year now, and sometimes it strikes me that there's almost two Maldens. There's kind of like the residential, maybe suburban area, and the downtown, kind of really dense mixed-use properties and stuff like that. And it seems like the people in the suburbs say that maybe we're urbanizing too fast. Do any of you feel that way, that we could urbanize too fast, that we're turning Malden into, I mean, I know it is a city, but making it feel like a city too much?
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the mayor nailed it, and then Steve elaborated on it. It's all about smart growth. And I don't believe that we're urbanizing too fast, because some of the statistics that are out there, we see other cities around us like Everett and Chelsea, and they have far eclipsed what we've done over the last 5 or 10 years as far as putting in these residential developments. So I think that that's partly part of the reason why we've missed the boat on some of the opportunities that were there. So I think as long as you're going along with smart growth, this is the right thing to be doing for our city.
And I would agree if it weren't for some of the other things that we've been working on. For instance, the bike path. We just had a wonderful presentation yesterday on Middlesex Fells, right on the edge of Malden, and then over here you have River's Edge. So, we do a lot of this down here, but you still have some of those other amenities, to really make the thing work, I think.
What I like about the city and this whole thing is, the interesting thing about Malden is you'll have this downtown core of development, yet that intensive development hasn't really spilled out beyond, the Florence Street, Route 60 corridor. So you have the intact, less dense neighborhoods, Edgeworth and the West End, and I think that's makes for a very viable community. This is really one of the first real nice places you come to once you come out of Boston. It's the first of the urban suburbs that has that kind of tree-lined residential neighborhoods with a really interesting supply of diversified housing, like the Victorians in the West End, and the single-family houses that kind of go all the way through this community, and the 2-family and 3-family houses. I think that all bodes very well for the city.
How do you feel? You've lived here for 11 years. Do you think we're urbanizing too fast in Malden?
I think not. From St. Petersburg, definitely not. Because, and even I think for those who came from Boston too, because we don't have too many buildings and maybe too many places where you can go, as I told. So definitely it's not urbanized. I think speaking about the city, because it's really a city with 60,000 population, what we really need besides all this, downtown, we need hospital.
Hospital.
Yeah, because people, I wrote article about this, and people don't have place where to receive, emergency help. They don't need have chance to go for medical help on everyday basis. It's just, you know, they need to go further to Melrose and, you know, to Medford, and there are some kind of rumors about closing even Medford Hospital, and it's, you know, a really huge problem for the city. If you speak about a city, not about a village, you know, you need to have place. And it's a serious concern for many people, and I read about this, you know, because there are a very, you know, serious decrease in, you know, level of health condition of the population.
I mean, I agree that, you know, Malden Hospital shuttered and, you know, just kind of left a blank here. But, you know, you've got to look at that industry in general, and hospitals everywhere, you know, are closing for whatever the reasons are, insurance, high costs and whatnot. The good thing is, there's not one in this city, but we do have Cambridge Health Alliance that does run, you know, offer some medical services, but you're really a stone's throw away from others. I know that doesn't make up for not having one, but that decision was not made by the city. It was made by the healthcare entity that felt that it wasn't a viable.
Yeah, but you know, because I made research on this city in 19th century, there was 12,000 people who live here, and they wanted to have a hospital, and they did it. Now we have, you know, 5 times more population, but we don't have a hospital. It's like, you know, some kind of paradox, and we can find a lot of, you know, like justification why we don't have it, why it's happened, but it still cannot help us.
Avoid, right.
Yeah.
Just to move on, we only have a limited amount of time. We do want to ask a few other questions as well. Mr. Mayor, I know you met with a shop owner the other day who said he was closing down his store after he had been robbed twice this week. Is, you know, the crime in the city or the perception of crime in the city something that's an obstacle to development? Or are there steps that I know you're hiring more police officers, but what kind of steps is your administration taking to kind of ensure people or investors that this is a safe place to
Well,
start a business?
a couple things. One is, obviously we're all here to support the Mini Mart. We met with them yesterday morning as well as last night, and I'm meeting with him right after this to talk about ways we can move forward together. We're anticipating, hopefully by May 1st, we will have that dedicated downtown officer who will patrol Pleasant Street, you know, the outside corridor here on Main, and even some of around the MBTA Malden Center. Other measures that we're looking at implementing is expansion of our surveillance camera program, and then continuing to, you know, deploy crime prevention measures that will help business owners as well as residents. One thing we're doing in the immediate aftermath of those crimes is Kevin is coordinating a meeting of all the store owners, the convenience store owners in Malden, and we're going to meet with them and talk about, you know, ways that they can enhance the security within their stores. For instance, if you look at the Mini Mart off of Main Street, you can't see in. So we want to see if we can, you know, we'll work with some of the store owners to, you know, look at the layout of the stores and also come up with other measures that might assist them moving forward.
Is that something that maybe you've experienced? Has anyone ever said that, you know, we're worried about crime in the city?
No, I was just going to say, the people that we meet with, generally the development people, really don't know Malden. They don't live here. They're here, and the reaction that we always get from developers is what a really kind of interesting and nice place this is, and they keep referring to why we keep the city so secret. I've never had anybody speak to me and ask me or say they weren't interested in coming here because they were perceiving Malden as not being a safe place. I mean, I think it's kind of the opposite. Most people are interested in this community because of its location and the unique diversity that we have.
All right, and we're just going to move to our final question right now. We wanted to kind of take a step back. You know, obviously we're all making these plans for some kind of long-term vision for Malden. And we'll start with you, Mr. Mayor. We were wondering, you know, how do you see Malden in maybe 2035 or 2040, about, you know, 20 years, 30 years from now? What's your vision?
Well, I think it's just going to be, it's a place where, you know, people from all cultures, all backgrounds, all ages will be able to have a place that they can enjoy in one way or another. And again, I'm about amenities, you know, what are the hooks that will draw people here, and whether it's walking, biking, running, driving, whatever it might be, Malden is going to provide the opportunity for people to be able to, work, live, and be productive here in the city of Malden.
How about you, Mr. Duffy?
Well, honestly, I see it to be akin to like Kendall Square and what's going to be happening in the Innovation District. With our Orange Line, you have access to over 700,000 working age adults who live within a half mile of the Orange Line stops. And then you throw in the commuter rail, because Malden has that as well. You're talking over 1 million working age adults. So I think with the amenities that we have, with the the density that'll be here, the great walking spaces, things perhaps like the ballpark, you're going to have these larger businesses saying, why not Malden? Starting to set up shop. And after a couple, you hit a critical mass, and then it becomes their own type of density. So about 2030, 2045 in there, I see a nice urban center like that with a lot of diversity and such.
How about you, sir?
Well, I'd like to be here. It's kind of interesting. See if I last that long. I really see the city as kind of in hope and expect that it'll be an example of a vibrant urban center, a city that's continually willing to think outside the box to improve itself, that it will continue with the good reputation it now has for its school system and is a great place to live, and hopefully it'll be a great place to come visit the Red Sox affiliated AA baseball team in downtown Malden, who just won the minor league
Their
World
cup.
Series.
Great, I get to follow them, huh? Thanks.
And still run by Mayor Christian.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I see it. Before the show started today, you and I, Chris, were talking about, would you want to be Davis Square? Would you want to be this square? I just think we want to be able to proudly say we're Malden Square, and that we've got a lot of happening things here. And to his point, we might have the Red Sox affiliate, and maybe we'll have a real bona fide, performing arts center or a nice, art center that we can, improve upon the cultural activities here. But I think I'd be proud to say it's Malden Square.
And what about you, Rita?
I also hope that I will be here. The same like you. So I think that it should, combine whatever you said about, sports center and also definitely cultural center and probably some kind of medical high tech, which I see center, some kind of, analog of Silicon Valley, because we have a lot of, things which can be, used, and also keep the unique, historical aspect of the city, which definitely can bring some kind of charm, for the whole future. So that's all.
All right, well, that should wrap up our program. I just want to thank all you guys for coming out and taking the risk of doing our pilot episode. So much appreciated.
And Chris, if we could just add the city website and Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, cityofmalden.org is the website, Facebook City of Malden, and then at cityofmalden.org. So at City of Malden are all our Twitter accounts. So it's been tremendously successful. It's a great way to share information between the city and the residents. So I encourage everyone to like us.
Of course. And another great source of information is, of course, Malden Patch. You can always find us at malden.patch.com. So thanks for watching.